Approximately 1 month ago, when Tonex pedal was released, I did a video that showed how we can use Tonex pedal and the Line 6 Helix together. I knew that this would be an extremely popular combination, and so many folks would have questions as to how to best connect the two together so that they work in the optimal manner. Now, one interesting thing that happened is I talked about a very specific method I would use when wanting to insert Tonex pedal into a loop in the Helix so that we could place it in the signal chain wherever we wanted and maybe have some effects before it and some effects after it. And I used a separate send and return block instead of an effects loop. Now, of course, I had many folks who didn't listen to my explanation as to why I did that, and very specifically why I did that. And listen, anybody can work however they want. If they're getting the results they want, then who am I to tell them to do otherwise? But I do make suggestions based off of best practices and stuff that I've tested out and things that I feel are the best way. But some folks come along, they don't listen to what I say in the video, or they just go, no, that's not important. And they leave comments to say such a thing, and it causes more confusion. And it's a little bit annoying because I have already tested this. I know that this is working a certain way. And to have folks come on and lead others astray does get a little frustrating when I put so much work into trying to help folks get the most out of it. So a lot of folks came on and said, don't worry about using a separate send and return, just use an effects loop. The problem with that is we are unable to set an effects loop to both having the send as an instrument level output and the return as a line level input. And to really hook it up to Tonex pedal, that is kind of necessary because Tonex pedal is expecting on the input to see an instrument level input. It is a 1 mega ohm instrument level input on the Tonex pedal. So we would want to send the signal from the Helix. In this case today, we're going to be talking about the HX Stomp. And you'll see why I'm starting to explain this first with the Helix in a moment. But we want to send out of the Helix or the HX Stomp an instrument level so the Tonex pedal is seeing the proper signal that it wants to see. But then the output of Tonex pedal is a line level, and we would want to have a line level coming back into the Helix or HX Stomp. And that is exactly how I set it up, and it worked really well. No problems, no issues. But some folks say, oh, you don't need to eat up a block. Now, eating up an extra block on the Line 6 Helix isn't such a huge deal. We have 2 paths, numerous blocks. I mean, it could be an issue for some folks if they really maximize their signal path and pack it full. But for the most part, I don't think on the Helix it's a huge issue, but on the HX Stomp it is. So naturally, I had a lot of folks approach me and ask, well, what about the HX Stomp? I don't want to eat up 2 blocks. Now, again, ideally, we would want to use a separate send and a separate return, setting the send to instrument level and the return to line level. But I do understand at the same time, that's eating up 2 of our 8 blocks instead of just 1. So that's 1 less block we have to add in some effects. Now, if you are just planning on adding maybe a little bit of reverb, a little bit of delay, maybe an overdrive pedal before and a bit of chorus, and you have lots of blocks, then I really would recommend using the separate send and return blocks. But what if we really want to use the HX Stomp and get 7 blocks, so that we have that effects loop block in the middle? And we want to maximize this. What do we set it to? Do we set it to instrument? Do we set it to line? Well, today I'm going to put an end and a rest to this once and for all. And I'm not here to tell you what you should do or what the right way is. I mean, I think we know technically what the right way is. We want to match up the signal we're sending to whatever the input of the next device is going to expect. So this doesn't just apply to Tonex pedal. This is going to apply to anything we're trying to interface with Helix or HX Stomp. So really the proper way to do this would be to have our send set at instrument level, going into Tonex pedal in this case, and then have our return set to line level because that's what Tonex pedal is sending out. But what happens if we don't? Is it that big a deal? Well, that's going to be for you to decide. What I want to show you today is what these things sound like and how they behave. Now, to test this, I used one particular performance of me playing a riff, but I'm only going to use a very tiny snippet of it so that we can really hone in and not hear and focus on the variation in my playing, but just rather maybe 2 chords that we can hear that is a fairly short sound file. Compare that back to back with what we're in fact trying to compare it to so we can really hone in on the differences. So the way I did this, I had the same performance reamped through all of these devices, and then I volume matched these to within 0.1 dB after the fact so that we're not hearing things we think we're hearing different because of a volume difference that's fooling us into thinking that there's a bigger difference than there is. So we volume match these. So if we're hearing a difference between two of these, then there actually is going to be a difference between these. So we're going to start off with reamping directly into Tonex pedal with nothing else in the signal path. This is going to be sort of our foundation, our baseline tone, because that's the way Tonex pedal sounds. Ideally, we want to interface that with Helix or HX Stomp. And in this case, it's HX Stomp. And we don't want that tone to change. We want it to be as close as possible to that. Now, granted, there may be some change. We are running extra cables and we are going through extra digital to analog and analog back to digital conversions. So yeah, there might be a difference. Are we going to be able to perceive those? Well, we'll have to wait and see. So first, we're going to listen to Tonex pedal by itself. Then I'm going to put Tonex pedal into the loop of the HX Stomp. And the first thing we're going to compare is doing it what I called the proper way, or what I feel is the proper way. Sending out instrument level out of the HX Stomp, hitting the instrument level input of Tonex pedal, coming out of the line output of Tonex pedal, and back to the return on HX Stomp with the return set to line level. So this is going to eat up 2 blocks. It's going to look like this on the HX Stomp. This is what a lot of folks feel is unnecessary, and maybe it is. We'll see. That'll be up to you to decide. But if we don't mind eating up the 2 blocks, this would be kind of, like I said, quote unquote, the proper way to do it. So we're going to listen to the sound of Tonex pedal, just direct, nothing to do with the stomp, and then we'll compare that to the sound of running it with a separate send and return block. Here's what those sound like. All right, what did you guys think? I don't really know if there was a huge difference, maybe tiny subtle differences there, but that's about as good as we're going to get when we're interfacing Tonex pedal with HX Stomp. And again, this doesn't just apply to Tonex pedal. This applies to any other device we want to put into a loop in HX Stomp. If we have a device that is expecting to see an instrument level, then we want to send it that. If we have a device that is expecting to see a line level, we would want to set it to that. And also on the way back into the stomp, as I've already mentioned. Okay, the next thing we're going to listen to is the sound of that baseline Tonex pedal direct, not in the loop of a stomp, and compare that to now utilizing the stomp with one effects loop block. That's it. But we're going to set it one time to instrument and one time to line, and we're going to see what the difference is between those. So here is the direct Tonex pedal versus the HX Stomp loop set to instrument level. So basically we're feeding the correct signal out of Stomp into Tonex pedal, but we're feeding the line level of Tonex pedal back out into the return, which is also set to instrument. So not ideal. All right, what did you guys think of that? I felt there was a slight tone difference, which probably has something to do with the possible impedance mismatch of sending a line level signal out into an instrument level return. Maybe the bottom end seemed a little bit fuller, or maybe it's the top end that was a little bit suppressed. I'm not really sure, but there was a slight difference. I'm not sure if you heard it. You're going to have to listen on a good set of headphones or a good set of speakers in a decent room to really perceive some of these differences. Now, if you feel that that's okay and not worth giving up an extra block in your HX Stomp to have the difference between the first 2 examples and the second 2 examples I showed you, then there's your answer. You're fine. I would say that that's probably the best compromise area, and you'll see why I say that, because now we're going to compare, again, our baseline tone of the Tonex pedal direct, and now we're going to use that loop, but we're going to set HX Stomp to line level. Here's the problem with this. We're now sending a line level signal out of HX Stomp, and we are hitting the instrument input of Tonex pedal with a line level signal. This to me is a no-no. This is what drove me nuts about people suggesting that it just doesn't matter, and you're going to hear why in just a second. So this is probably, to me, in my opinion, the most important part of the chain. We do not want to hit the front of Tonex pedal because that's our amp, right? We don't want to hit that with too hot a signal or a signal it's not expecting. I did a video talking about input level gain last week, which was extremely important. And anything we do to what's hitting the front of the amp is going to make that amp, in this case, tone model, behave very differently. So let's take a listen to those two files. So I think you'll agree there's a massive difference. Two things. The bottom end got kind of weird. It was nothing like the original, and there was more saturation and gain, which would be expected. We're now hitting the front of that tone model with this line level signal. Now, if this doesn't bother you and that's how you're set up and everything's good and you feel like everything's wonderful, then I'm not here to tell you to change that. But I just want you to be aware that that is actually what is happening. It's all about being aware of these things so that then we can make our decisions for our workflow and what works best for us. I cannot tell you what to do, and nobody else can or should either, but I just do want you to be aware of what's happening. So when you set it like this with the stomp set to line level on that loop, you aren't really getting back from Tonex pedal what the intended sound of that original amp was. We're hitting it in a way that it wasn't intended to. So now let's listen to these files again back to back so that you can hear them all kind of in a row and make your decision. And I'm going to alternate between Tonex pedal direct to each of these and back and forth so you can hear how they compare to the original file. All right, so there you have it. What do you guys think? By the way, the tone we were hearing today, not that you heard much of it, but it's from my Rect Z Ultimate bundle, which is a tone model bundle of this amazing Dr. Z Z-Rec Junior amp that I have here. I've had great feedback on these tones. People are really enjoying them. There is a free one up on ToneNet and available on my website below if you want to click the link and grab that. And there's the full bundle too if you wanted to help support my channel and grab that and have the full tone model range with different levels of gain. And it's a wonderful tone model bundle. Hope you enjoy that. So I hope that that does help you to understand the difference between these settings. It's going to be up to you. Do you want to eat up 2 blocks on the HX Stomp? I don't know. I can't tell you whether you should or not, but from the sound files today, if you listen to that example in comparison to the original direct to Tonex pedal and you don't feel there's enough of a difference between that and the setting of having an effects loop set to instrument, then there's your answer. Use the effect loop, set it to instrument, and adjust your levels accordingly to get what you need coming back out of the stomp. I would, in my opinion, suggest against setting the HX Stomp to line, because then, as I mentioned, we are hitting Tonex pedal with a signal that it doesn't want to see, and that tone model is going to act very differently. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm going to leave you now with the demo for my Rect Z Ultimate Tone Model Bundle. The links are below if you want to grab that if you do. I really do appreciate you doing so. Your support helps me to keep this channel going and to keep hopefully giving you videos that are going to be helpful to get the most out of your gear. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please like the video. Please share it with anybody who you think would get some use and enjoyment out of watching it. And also please subscribe to my channel. Hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content out. I will be back very soon with some more. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Ciao for now.